You know, their cages, their courts, and that's where they can really express their creativity and their style.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes, you know, they even influence the way the professional game is played, and that's what VOLTA football really is. It's about celebrating that creativity and all of that style and kind of passion. And VOLTA story is a narrative experience that brings you through that world, and you're confronted with some colorful characters, some real legends of Street you'll meet and get to test your mettle against them. You also get to build your squad up and ready yourself for kind of the biggest tournament in the VOLTA world, which is the World Championships in Buenos Aires.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to want to try and get the right players, the right mix of players to try and take a run at that. And along the way, you're going to make some friends probably, and some enemies too. But really, it's just a fun, lighthearted story about kind of diving into that deep and colorful world of street football.
And are we talking about a branching narrative like The Journey as well, or is it a bit more of a straightforward experience through it?
It's a more straightforward experience in some respects, but in other respects, it's got more user agency in that, unlike the Journey, which we had, curated characters,
Mm-hmm.
you have your avatar now, and that was really important for us, that we wanted to satisfy what fans have been asking for a while, which is the ability to make themselves in the game and bring themselves into that space and experience that narrative in that world. And so now we're all about giving you the opportunity to customize yourself, choose how you look, what you wear in game, how you dance when you score a goal, and how you move on the court, and really able to create your kind of personal brand inside the VOLTA football world, and that was really important for us as well.
You worked on The Journey as well.
I did, yeah.
And obviously that was a huge change for FIFA to introduce a story mode, to introduce narrative. And now that this is the 4th year we're having a story in FIFA.
Yeah.
What have you learned? What is it about creating stories within this sports structure that kind of works for you? What do you think is making it continue to work?
Yeah, going back to The Journey, that was always a trilogy, and we were always aiming to make it kind of this kind of nice, clean arc, and we wrapped it up nicely in 19. We're pretty happy with the results there, and we also heard that the fans were hungry for that same kind of experience. But the sports world is just so full of drama and interesting stories in and of itself, right? It's a factory for that kind of stuff. So it's not hard to draw those kinds of moments out and get them to happen to you in that context. Mm-hmm. And so when you insert interesting character into that, that's when you get the fun stuff. And I think that was where we kind of tested the waters a bit in The Journey and figured out what our voice was and how we could, create a fun world to explore.
Yeah.
And then in VOLTA football, we were able to take that even further, because it's our world and we had to do what we wanted with it, and that was really fun.
So you're inventing a bit more around that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And do you have a similar sort of multi-year plan for this like you did with The Journey?
Well, right now we're just focused on 20, mm-hmm. And so we're trying to get that out the door right now and doing the last tweaks here and there. But we're really hoping that the fans respond to VOLTA football story like they did The Journey.
Cool.
Yeah.
And in terms of, like you mentioned that you've refined the 11-11 system. Obviously, you're paring it down for smaller games now, multiple different types of smaller games.
Yes.
What kind of challenges did that present with using those existing mechanics but having to rely on smaller and smaller pools of
players?
It
was really interesting. I mean, conceptually from the very beginning, it was really important for us when we were doing our research. We discovered that one of the core pillars of small-sided football and street football is that it is so diverse. Wherever you go, every country, every city has its own version, flavor of the game, and it was critical for us to capture that diversity and that difference across all the ways you can play the game. So that's why we set about creating 3v3 rush with no keeper, 4v4, 4v4 rush, 5v5 futsal. And when you introduce something as simple as walls like you see here in a smaller space, even though we're using the same fundamental gameplay that FIFA has been known for so long, it changes the dynamics so much, right?
Yeah,
there's no out of bounds. It creates a kind of more fast-paced, frenetic feel. You got to move the ball really quickly, and it also creates a space where skill moves are something that you really want to get good at. And something that we thought was really critical to achieving that was simplifying them, just to make the experience a bit more accessible for users that might be coming in, players that might be coming in to play our game that maybe aren't even football fans. They just want to try something out that's new.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what VOLTA does for us in that respect is it kind of reduces football to its elemental levels, right? It takes away some of the rules that for an outsider can be a bit confusing, right? And it's just down to kick the ball into the net, right? And use your teammates to do that. And this, what you're seeing here, this 3v3, the wall becomes like a fourth teammate almost, right? You can play it off the wall to yourself, to your teammate, and all these things that we try to kind of bring together with the gameplay team, which they did an unbelievable job to make it this experience that feels really fresh and different, and it's unique in and of itself. But at the same time, you do know that you're playing FIFA, and you do know that when I go to the 11v11 game, what I'm learning here inside these courts, these cages, is going to translate. And that was also super important, that people could graduate, if you will, from VOLTA into that if they wanted to.
Oh, that's cool.
Or if they were just happy playing the smaller-sided football, they gave them that depth that they can stay in there and play it in different ways. That's why I wanted to create so many different ways to play the game, not only in the match types and the squad sizes, but also, so we've got the VOLTA Story, obviously, which is exciting for us. We have VOLTA World, where you can just travel across the 17 locations across the world and play tournaments in the different various forms. And then for that little competitive edge, we introduced VOLTA League, which is that kind of online competitive vibe as well. So we wanted to give you all those different ways to kind of dive into it. And a really fun part about it as well is that all the teams that you're playing against the AI are composed and built by the community.
Right. Okay,
so all that stuff we were talking about, customization, personalization, about having your own identity in that world, you're going to see it, all these people's different takes on what their VOLTA players are, and have the ability to have them on your team. Because after you beat somebody,
you pick them up.
Yeah.
And in terms of, I mean, you're talking about VOLTA like it's an entire separate game in some senses, like you could just concentrate on that.
Yeah.
What made you include it as part of FIFA rather than make a FIFA VOLTA game?
Yeah, that's a good question. For us, it was always about the FIFA as a whole experience, and like we said, that a player can come into here and basically learn football, and then when they're in this space, they can go, hey, I like this. What else is there? And then FIFA 11 aside is right there. And so for us, is about how these things can work together and complement each other and not be two totally separate entities, and that they can actually work together as one unit and help people understand and love the game that so many of us love so much already.
That's really cool. And in terms of that, just to return briefly to the narrative mode, can you talk about what that story is at all? Like, with your created character, can you talk about where you'll go with it?
Are you asking me to spoil the story on a live stream?
Not spoil the story, just the start, just the inciting incident.
Well, so the ultimate goal, like I alluded to before, I'm going to be sneaky.
Okay.
No, I'm kidding. Is to get to the VOLTA World Championships and take a crack at that, right?
Right.
So
Gotcha.
to build your squad along the way, and it's about understanding what makes VOLTA tick.
Right.
If that's
okay.
vague and
I feel like that's all
enough.
you're going to tell me.
Yeah. But the cool part is, like I said, you'll get to meet some real life street legends, as well as some real life football stars you might recognize. So.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
And to bring Sam in a bit, because I feel like you've just had to watch a lot of VOLTA for a long time there. I'd love to talk a bit about, we've talked about how the game's been refined for VOLTA, but obviously you're always working on the 11-11 game.
Yes,
like,
for sure.
What are your big goals this year with the gameplay in FIFA?
Yes, so the first thing I actually want to mention is that this year
confusing, right? And it's just down to kick the ball into the net, right? And use your teammates to do that. And this, what you're seeing here, this 3v3, the wall becomes like a fourth teammate almost, right? You can play it off the wall to yourself, to your teammate, and all these things that we try to kind of bring together with the gameplay team, which they did an unbelievable job to make it this experience that feels really fresh and different, and it's unique in and of itself. But at the same time, you do know that you're playing FIFA, and you do know that when I go to the 11v11 game, what I'm learning here inside these courts, these cages, is going to translate. And that was also super important, that people could graduate, if you will, from VOLTA into that if they wanted to.
Oh, that's cool.
Or if they were just happy playing the smaller-sided football, they gave them that depth that they can stay in there and play it in different ways. That's why I wanted to create so many different ways to play the game, not only in the match types and the squad sizes, but also Deuce's.
We work very close with the community. The community feedback was very important, and most of those big features that we are bringing to FIFA 20 are based on feedback on what the community wanted to see. So this year we focus on the three main areas of football, which is on the ball, off the ball, and the ball itself. And I want to start telling you a little bit about off the ball, which is a re-architected positioning system that we have in FIFA 20 that allows us to give more time and space to the dribbler, so there can be more one-on-ones. So one-on-ones, that's what we're basically trying to encourage. Why? Because, well, first of all, they are a very interesting part of football when you see Mbappe trying to beat Jordi Alba, for example. And then in FIFA, it's going to be the time where user skill is going to matter. That's where my skill is going to shine. So we wanted to encourage those moments. So that's